Hi everyone. I just want to make it absolutely clear that I'm a parent carer, and the work that we did on the co-production was all very emotional. A lot of things that you might hear might be quite negative, and that is no reflection on the CAMS service whatsoever. We worked with a lot of families who were going through a lot of crisis, and they wanted to share their experiences with you. So, with no further ado, I'm really excited to be at this event. think it's been brilliant all day. It's been such an inspiration. As it says, my name's Helen Torr. I am a parent carer of a 25-year-old young man. I also work within PPI at the Institute of Mental Health at the University of Nottingham, which is where I met Naomi. But I've also worked with families with neurodivergent children and young people for over 20 years. In fact, ever since my son was born, in local authorities, secondary and special academies, and in the voluntary sector. And I'm acutely aware of the struggles that many families face when they're trying to access the brilliant support that CAMS can offer. I do recall that my son, when he was about 8, and I just sat and cried all the way through our CAMS appointment because, for a start, it was difficult to get to that point, but also the fact that somebody actually cared and was listening to how we were feeling made such a difference. But often the pathway is confusing, eligibility is vague, and the waiting lists sadly can be long. And if you stand this alongside the current, in Nottinghamshire, almost 2-year waiting list for autism and ADHD assessment for a diagnosis, so many children not in school, the massive rise in education healthcare plans, and it's understandable that not only families but services are very stretched. And the individual teams at CAMS in Nottinghamshire particularly can work very differently, which can be unnecessarily complicated. But CAMS have a wealth of experienced practitioners within the service, and yet parent carers often report that the pathway is confusing and fraught with black holes, brick walls, and it takes the focus away from the important work that CAMS are doing for children and young people. So the question was, is there any guidance on how the triage process works? And can we direct families through this process so they know what to expect at each step of the way? How do families and practitioners know who is eligible for assessment and treatment? And what are the barriers that children face when trying to access CAMS? What happens when CAMS says no, or you are discharged at some point? What's next? And CAMS is usually needed when people are reaching a bit of a crisis, and that specialist intervention is required. So we need to make the experience as inclusive and accessible as possible. And we thought to do this, a new framework would be needed. And I recall, and I'm not sure if it's an accurate recollection, that the former Secretary of State, Andrew Lansley, I think, said, "Not about me without me." And for us, this means that none of this could happen without involving the very families, young people, and professionals who have the lived experience of the CAMS triage assessment and discharge process. So there are so many people who are invisible. And where I work at the moment at the Carers Hub, parent carers very often don't recognise themselves as carers. They don't recognise the role that they play in their children's lives. So the "not about me without me" came out throughout all of our co-production work, so that we made sure that nothing that we did that might affect these families was without their input. And the journey to now actually started in January 2025, when parents and carers in Nottinghamshire were asked to share their experience of CAMS and how that experience could have been improved. And Noemi and I attended parent carer conferences, many individual parent support groups. We used social media, WhatsApp groups to reach out as many parent carers as we could. And we were overwhelmed with the responses and the honesty of people. Now, some shared their documents and assessments with us. Some we spoke to on a one-to-one basis as a form of interview. Many preferred to remain anonymous. They told us that they were worried in case any criticism might jeopardise any future treatment. But we met over coffee, online and county-wide, and we wanted to ensure that there were no barriers to them contributing to this framework. We also connected with an existing young persons group to get their voice and experience, and work with mental health and other professionals, because without their input, it wouldn't be working. And through the honesty and often emotional stories of all these people, we were able to build our PPI group to ensure that this framework was truly co-produced and not consulted or informed or not co-designed, but actually co-produced. Now, I asked a large parent carer group that I've set up with over about 1,500 members if they could just give me some words about their lived experience of trying to access CAMHS. And there's a lot of positives here and a lot of negatives, you can see. But many of the parent carers who got in touch with us had negative experiences, talking to us about confusion, turned away with no real alternative, and discharge if their young person didn't engage. And then there were stories of individual practitioners changing the lives of young people, working with families for longer than the norm, and parent carers building long-lasting friendships with other parent carers who were going through the same process. Some amazing work that is going on is sometimes overshadowed by the process of getting there. So how could we pull this all together and build something so that everybody has a positive experience? So this takes us to April 2025, and the PPI group was set up with 5 key parent carers and has met regularly with Naomi and I to build this framework step by step. And we've revisited it many times, included with the young people and with the professionals. Very slowly it has come together, and that is exactly what it needed. It needed to be given the time and the input for it to be right. We had to consider the feasibility of the framework and the impact on resources, and how well does this support different neurodivergent profiles? Does it work across the 5 to 16 age range? And how does it involve parent carers and schools and the referrers? And is it supported by neurodivergent specific research? And can it be realistically implemented into CAMHS? And it was very difficult for many to relive what for some had been quite a traumatic experience. But we're also encouraged by and celebrated the great practice and innovative ideas of many teams and professionals. Now, our PPI group were key in bringing all these thoughts together to build the draft framework, which we do feel will improve experiences and outcomes for neurodivergent children. And on the next slide, I just want to say thank you to the parent carers there and the many other parent carers, young people and professionals who have contributed to the work that we've done this year. They've taken their time out of their own lives and contributed with great ideas, great enthusiasm and great emotion. And I'm looking forward to what the next steps are going to be. So thank you.